The White House communications director is a 21-year-old woman named Hope Hicks, who has been with President Trump since the very beginning of his campaign and is now about to talk to the special counsel investigation. White House officials told Politico that Robert Mueller's team is scheduled to interview Hicks by mid-November. And as early as this week, Politico reports the investigatory team is looking to interview 3 or 4 other current White House officials as well. This new phase of the investigation comes amid fresh questions about the role of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He was, of course, present at a March 2016 meeting with campaign aide George Papadopoulos, who has since pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contact with Kremlin proxies. And that was the meeting when Papadopoulos said he proposed arranging a meeting between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to a former campaign aide who spoke to the New York Times, Mr. Sessions, as the campaign's top national security official, spoke vehemently against the idea, asking others not to discuss it again, which may or may not be true. But it's hard to believe that he completely forgot about that whole thing when he repeatedly denied under oath any knowledge of any possible campaign communications with Russia.
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it. Further, I have no knowledge of any such conversations by anyone connected to the Trump campaign.
You don't believe that surrogates from the Trump campaign had communications with the Russians? Is that what you're saying?
I did not, and I'm not aware of anyone else that did. And I don't believe it happened. But
and you don't believe it now?
I don't believe it happened.
Congressman Eric Swalwell is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. He joins me now. Attorney General said, I'm not aware of anybody who did, but he was in a meeting, which we now know from a filing in court signed by the person in question as part of a plea, that he said in that meeting that Sessions was in, I think I can arrange for a meeting with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. What do you make of that?
Chris, good evening. And first, our hearts are with you in New York and the victims there. What I make of that, Chris, is that this is a theme that we have seen from Donald Trump, his son, Jared Kushner, Attorney General Sessions, and just about everyone at the highest level, is that they have failed to acknowledge meetings with Russians. Only when confronted by you or other folks in the press or congressional investigators with contradicting evidence do they finally come around or say that I fail to recall. So I think what's also important from the Papadopoulos stipulation of facts is this theme now of getting dirt on Hillary Clinton's emails. I mean, that also now has come up in so many different contexts. And so I think that, again, it looks like Attorney General Sessions was not forthcoming. This
was the court document that I should just read so that people know. When defendant Papadopoulos introduced himself to the group, he stated in sum and substance he had connections that could help arrange a meeting between then-candidate Trump and President Putin. And then this is the other part of the court document. Mr. Trump listened with interest and asked questions of Mr. Papadopoulos. Mr. Trump didn't say yes and he didn't say no, said the former aide, who agreed to describe the meeting on condition of anonymity. That, of course, the New York Times on this. I guess the question is, do you think it's plausible that all this back and forth simply escaped the notice of the Attorney General?
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidences anymore when it comes to the Trump team and Russia. So no, I don't think it's plausible at all.
Do you think he was intentionally misleading the committee?
I think he has failed a number of times to, be truthful. His contacts with Russia. And so, I don't understand what explanation he would give here other than he didn't want to acknowledge that somebody had told he, the president, and other senior advisors that they had a connection to Vladimir Putin. And so, again, Chris, this is just a reoccurring theme here. And, whether they actually worked with the Russians and, quote unquote colluded or did their damnedest to try and work with them, they wanted to work with them.
Well, let me stop you there, because that's the question. I mean, in some ways, what's interesting is that I think the press and politicians and the White House have arrived on this word collusion, colluding, which has no legal meaning, right? There's no part of the criminal U.S. code where you can be charged with collusion.
Conspiracy is the word.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can in antitrust law, but that's a different thing. But the point being that you can, what do you think, of what we know now from the charging document, how do you characterize the actions of the campaign?
I characterize it this way. A bunch of people were told that there is money in a vault. So they got the ski masks, they got the vault blueprints, they talked about how they were going to get the money out of that vault, and what we're trying to figure out is, did they actually work and go take the money out of the vault? We know that an attempt, at the very least, was made. They wanted to get that money out of the vault. In the law, an attempt can be just as incriminating as a complete act. But right now, we just want to complete our investigation so we can answer that question. But we know they were willing and eager to work with the Russians.
All right, Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you.
My pleasure.
Frank Figliuzzi is a former assistant